snake, and come and perch on the tree. Now he doesn't have any teeth, so he's got to subdue that animal a different way than other predators. So what he does is he actually hits that prey item up against whatever he's standing on. In this case, it would be Susan's arm. And balance back. There we go. Now what he'll do is he'll hit that prey item up against whatever he's standing on, it gets subdued, and then he'll tilt his head back and swallow it whole. Now you may think that's about as big of a snake as a bird. It actually also has a very interesting legend behind it. A lot of people believe that the Dutch were the first explorers to land on Australia. But there's actually evidence that shows that the Chinese actually showed up there about 300 years before them. There's actually some sunken ships off the coast that they found. Now there's a legend that comes from the Aboriginal people that says the Chinese landed on Australia, kind of looking around, checking things out, and start hearing those weird noises coming from those deep, dark woods. Those hoots, those hollers, those laughters. Now if you're exploring new territory, never been there before, it's a completely different land, you're walking around in these really dark forests, and you start hearing that call, and you can't see what's making that call, what are you going to think? Monsters, something, spirits, something's going on, something you don't want to mess with. So you hop back on your boat and you go explore elsewhere, right? So the Dutch show up 300 years later, they're kind of looking around, and they were actually fortunate enough to actually see the bird making that call. So knowing that it's coming from a bird, even though it's a really weird bird, they still try to stay and settle Australia. So according to that legend, if the Chinese were actually fortunate enough to see the awesome bird making that weird call, Australia could be a Chinese-speaking nation today instead of England. Now as Lisa's walking around with him, you may be thinking, you're joking with me, Marge, that is not a kangaroo, that is a rat. Well, they are nicknamed the rat kangaroos because they do kind of have the same kind of facial characteristics. But I do assure you he is a kangaroo. He has the same hopping ability, the same form of reproduction. In fact, when a brush-tailed bettong is born, it's only about the size of a cooked grain of rice. Makes that trap out mom's abdomen and stays there for about 6 to 7 months. Now, these guys are very endangered, just like the double wallaby. They come from the southwest region of Australia. They are endangered for the same reasons. So we're very, very proud to have them breeding. In fact, we've had a very, very successful breeding program here with the bettongs. We've had a lot of different bettongs have grown up, and we've sent them off to other institutions, and we're helping keeping that captive population. She's nocturnal as well, just like the bettong. She's also omnivorous, just like the bettongs as well. She'll actually eat pollen, nectar, sap from the trees, bugs, fruit, vegetables, all sorts of things. Now they are arboreal, meaning they spend most of their time up in the trees. And since that is about as big as they get, you wouldn't want to come down to the ground either, because the predators are down on the ground. So what do they do to get from tree to tree without coming down to the ground? Well, if you take a look between her front arms and her back legs, there's a lot of skin. And what they'll do is, just like a flying squirrel, they'll glide from tree to tree, or in this case, from keeper to keeper. Now in the wild, here she goes, da 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 da. Line it up. Whee! Now in the wild, they can actually glide up to 50 yards. It's 150 feet. She only glided, whatever that word is. She actually flew about maybe 6 feet or so from top to down. So eventually, once she gets a little bit older, she's still kind of young, we're still building up her muscles. If we can get a tall enough keeper, we can actually get her to glide from one end of the rope to the other with no problem whatsoever. Pretty impressive. Now I mentioned that they have that same adaptation as a flying squirrel. They aren't related to flying squirrels. Flying squirrels are placental mammals. These guys are marsupials. They're not related at all. But they develop the same adaptation. It's a really cool thing called convergent evolution. It happens several times with all sorts of different animals. And what it is an animal that's not related to each other develop the same adaptation to survive in there and sniff and things like that. Or it can be something like training, like what we've been doing with Bindi and Charmilla here. Now Bindi has been working on jumping over this hurdle. Now kangaroos are, just think about it, there she goes. Kangaroos are very, very good hoppers. In fact, Bindi can jump a lot higher than that too. So we like to bring them out here, show them just how agile they are, but also because to let you know that training works for several different advantages. One is if we ever need to check out how Bindi is doing, whether she's hopping okay, if she's doing all right, she does have a little Joey in there, so we want to make sure she stays good and healthy. We can just ask her to simply jump over everything. That way we know her legs are working okay, her senses are working all right, and we can see how she's moving around. Now Charmilla, we've been working on mark training. What that is pretty much asking them to jump up on top of something like this box here. Now this also shows you just not only how tall they can jump by going around, but how high they can jump when they're standing right next to it. Now that box is taller than her and she has no problem jumping up on top of it. Now we can also use this if we ever need to get a weight on Sharmilla. Instead of picking her up and putting her on the scale, we actually just ask her to jump up on the scale for us. It works very, very well. It reduces a lot of stress for the animals and also for the keepers too. Now both of these girls were hand raised. In fact, I've mentioned hand raising a lot today. I want to make sure nobody thinks that we go out into a field. She gets one of the sound effects again. I want to make sure everybody understands that we don't go out into a field, pick up a joey, and be like, oh, you're cute, I want to hand raise you, let's put you in the show. Not quite. Kangaroo mothers can do a very, very good job of taking care of their joeys. They know exactly what they need. The only time we ever pull a joey is when we actually absolutely have to. Like in Vincent's case, the antibiotics we were giving his mother affected her milk production. Things like that. That's the only time we ever do it. Now with that being said, being able to hand raise a kangaroo does have its advantages. Now not only can we bring them out here because they're very comfortable with people, we can introduce them to the public and show everyone how awesome these animals are, but we can also do a lot of research into their development. Now if you go up to our butterfly garden where all those picnic tables are at, there's actually a series of pictures of a little joey that's just a week old, of pictures taken every week all the way up to a joey foot. We were able to do this because his mother was hand raised. She's very comfortable with us. We were able to look into her pouch and write down documentation of all the development. We knew when his eyes opened up, when his fur grew in, when he started to stick his head out of the pouch, all this stuff. And if you think about it, researchers in the wild don't actually get to see the joeys until after they're 5 months old, because those joeys are inside the pouch.
Catch them every day for this, or if they train to come in at a certain
It's a training process. For a lot of our kangaroos, like with Derek and Pearson and them, we just simply say inside and then just hop right in. So it also depends on where they are at on our property as well too. So sometimes we'll, with like Bimby and Sharmilla, since they're our little princess and our little queen, we just kind of pick them up and carry them in.